And yours. One more show till Thanksgiving, so I'll say it now in case you're spending tomorrow with your family. We're thankful for you. Tell your friends about NewsNation.
Hey, everybody, I'm Brian Enton, and for Chris Cuomo tonight, it has been 3 weeks since Kamala Harris and the Democrats took a shellacking by Trump, and today we finally heard from the people in charge of the Harris-Walz campaign. They gave an interview. They're finally speaking out. They spoke to Pod Save America. And in that interview, Harris's campaign chair, Jen O'Malley Dillon, tried to explain away some of their $1.5 billion with a B, dollar spending. Take a look at this.
Call her daddy was really an important choice to make. You can look at, did we get the best deal here? This was quite costly here. It's quite expensive. At the end of the day, though, I think if you look at the spend we had, the majority of the money we spent, it was to reach voters. You mentioned the sphere, of course, as you well know, to do something like that, we had to make some bets pretty early on. But we believed as we were closing the race that it was really important for people to feel like they were part of something bigger and that we were trying to identify opportunities to culturally reach people.
Quite expensive, she said. I would say so. $1.5 billion. And on last night's show, Chris talked to Democratic mega donor John Morgan about Harris's political future. Here's what he had to say.
A lot of people got rich on the back of donors trying to stop Trump. And I think this disqualifies her forever. Obama did not want her. Obama did not endorse her for 5 days. Pelosi did not want her.
But why did Biden pick her?
I think it was to say F you to Nancy Pelosi and Barack Obama and every representative that was pushing him out.
All right, so let's bring in a member of the DNC Finance Committee who blew the whistle on how much and how long the Harris campaign was spending, Lindy Lee, and also former special assistant to the Bidens, Michael LaRosa. Thank you both for being with us. Lindy, I want to start with you. What did you make of this podcast, and what did you make of the fact that it seems like the Harris campaign leaders were blaming everyone else except themselves?
Brian, thank you so much for having me. I've been following your reporting over the years, so it's great to be with you. I was actually surprised. Well, not entirely shocked that they failed to address where the billions of dollars went. Let's bear in mind that it wasn't just $1 billion. It was $2 billion because they raised $1 billion through the campaign and another $1 billion through the super PAC. So where did that $2 billion go? And so we know so far that millions went to celebrities, went to private jets, to ice cream. $450,000 a day was spent on the sphere, and bear in mind that we lost Nevada. So it's astounding. And so how can Americans believe that the Democratic Party can properly handle taxpayer funds if we can't even handle a campaign? There has to be a serious accounting and a serious postmortem, not just slapping each other on the back and congratulating each other.
Yeah, it came up over and over again, Michael, during this podcast. Oh, we only had 100 days. We only had 100 days. This was an unprecedented situation. I guess it's a fair point, but still, I mean, the fact that they spent $1.5 billion in such a short amount of time, still sort of jaw-dropping.
Yeah, but the context of this entire election will never be discussed without that aspect of what took place last July. The truth is, and it's undeniable, that she was placed in a situation, we passed the torch to her, but we passed it in the fourth quarter. So every decision they made within those 107 days, and keep in mind, it wasn't just 107 days, but included in that, she had to actually lock down the delegates. They had to redo the year they spent planning the convention. They had to reorchestrate that because it was a new candidate. They had to vet and pick a vice presidential candidate. They had to prepare for a debate, and early voting started in some places in mid-September. So unfortunately, there are a lot of things we could debate over: tactics, candidate error, line-by-line spending. That all is par for the course on every losing campaign. It happens all the time. John Kerry, we were very angry because John Kerry had $2 million left in the bank, or had several million left in the bank. He was excoriated for that. So these kinds of things happen in losing campaigns, but she was placed in a very disadvantageous situation from the beginning.
I see you making
Michael,
facial expressions, Linda. Yeah, you're trying to get in. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. I do want to say that $1 billion in 100 days is not just run of the mill. This is astounding. And I have a duty of care to my donors who gave millions of dollars, and it wasn't easy for them to give. Some of them were paying in installments. It was a sacrifice for them. They looked for ways to give. So, people gave their hearts and souls to the campaign. They deserve a serious accounting to see why we were told that she was close or even winning in some of the swing states, but we lost all 7.
Well,
even the finance of the DNC said it was a shock.
He answered that question today, and he said none of the public polling showed what their internal polling was showing. They knew that. It's not their fault that
Michael,
the news organization. Yeah.
They told us.
Lindy, you were on the. I'm interested, Lindy. You were on the call. You were on the call today. There was this call today with the campaign, and Harris was even on the call. What did they say? We heard on the podcast, but what did they say on this call? Did they accept any blame? Did they sort of talk about mistakes that were made?
No, none. No responsibility, no accounting, no postmortem, no explanation. All they said was that she was a visionary leader, that the Biden-Harris administration was a tremendous success. We didn't hear any sort of explanation for what exactly happened. This was not a squeaker of a race. This was not a close race. This is a serious shellacking. And we need to understand why the difference, the delta between the expectations and the reality was so significant. How are you ever going to expect anyone to ever donate or to believe in the Democratic Party again? We were sold a false bill of goods, and we need to know what happened. And I fear that all these consultants who made bank, who made hundreds of millions of dollars on these media buys, they're just going to fail upwards and go on to the next campaign. And meanwhile,
well, that's a whole other story. All the people who got rich off of this. I think that's a whole nother segment. I want to play another. Michael, hold on. I want to play another segment from the podcast that they were on, where they actually defended. Remember, Harris was on the Call Her Daddy podcast. It still has less than 1 million views, by the way. I checked right before the show. I think it's up to like 907,000 views. You compare that to Trump on Rogan, it's up to like 50 million. But they defended it. Listen to this.
I think that in a 107-day race, it is very difficult to do all the things you would normally do in a year and a half, 2 years. The hurricane impacted 2 weeks of our ability to reach people, not just in North Carolina and Georgia, but all across the country. We women don't get far in life talking about double standards, so that's not the point. But 2 weeks talking about how she didn't do interviews, which, she was doing plenty, but we were doing in our own way. We would do an interview, and to Stephanie's point, the questions were small and processy and about
dumb.
So she's talking about doing interviews, Michael. We know she went on Call Her Daddy. It came out that they spent 6 figures to build a replica of the podcast set because she couldn't go there for the podcast. I mean, does any of this stuff make you mad, Michael, or surprise you?
If I go through line by line, I'm sure there's going to be things that surprise me. However, nobody was raising these issues during the campaign. It's all the Monday morning quarterbacking that's happening after the campaign.
They didn't know.
And that is very typical of losing campaigns. It doesn't happen on winning campaigns.
They didn't know.
But the same kind of line by lines you can go through on the Biden campaign and go through all of our spending, and you can second guess all those decisions too. You won't do that because we won. Now, it's very different in this campaign, and it's always different for losing campaigns. They're always held to a different standard, and maybe that's okay. We have the right to do that. But you know what? We also have another election in 4 years where we can find a new candidate.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Look, if the roles were reversed, we would be doing the same thing, going through exactly what Trump spent and what mistakes were made. Lindy and Michael, interesting conversation. I appreciate you both for coming on tonight.
We didn't know about the expenses until after the election, so how could we possibly raise it? We didn't get the reporting until after the Monday morning.
But if she won, would anyone even care? Would anyone even be talking about it, though? I mean, it's a fair point, Michael. Okay, I want to bring in, Bill O'Reilly now. Well, we'll see what happens. I mean, look, it's all coming out now. I want to bring in Bill O'Reilly now. I want to get his. I want to get Bill O'Reilly's take on all of this. Bill, it's good to see you. I got to tell you, I guarantee within seconds, my parents are going to be texting me a photo of me on the screen with Bill O'Reilly because they are going to be so excited. So the picture will be coming through, I think, in a moment. But I want to get your take on.
All right.
Go ahead.
I want to note to your parents, if you have one of these and you take the screenshot, you can edit Brian out.
Yeah.
It's a little jest.
They probably will edit me out, actually. They probably will edit me out.
What's your question?
Okay, what's your take on this whole, we didn't do anything wrong, it's not our fault, the podcast went on for an hour and a half, and they didn't really admit one mistake?
Okay, it's like the New York Jets. You guys follow the football, nobody did anything wrong, and they're 3-8. Look, Kamala Harris was a bad candidate. She reminded me of John Kerry. Remember John Kerry running for president? She just didn't connect with any of the folks. She was a very far left, the most far left presidential candidate in history. And we didn't know it until 3 weeks ago tonight. Americans don't want that. They don't want biological men playing sports against girls. They don't want punishing taxation toward those who are successful in the marketplace. They don't want 14 million foreign nationals running around unattended in the country. They don't want any of this, all right? And Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, they engineered all of that crazy stuff. In addition, all you have to do, if you're really fair, and of course partisan political players on both sides are not fair. Fairness is the furthest thing from their mind. All you have to do is analyze the Brett Baer interview on Fox. So Baer was allowed to get, I think, 9 questions in the 21 minutes that he had. Only a 21-minute interview. They had a clock on it, and Kamala's people, probably some that were in that podcast, were going, oh, cut. You know, why? She's there, talk to Baer. Out of the 9 questions, she didn't answer one. Not one. So even the dimmest American, even the people who have no blanket idea what's going around them, they go, how come she won't answer any questions? Bad candidate. That's why she lost.
Yeah, and I think they came back and said they were like dumb questions or something like that. And just watching the podcast with her leadership team, it seems like they lost touch in a sense with regular Americans. I mean, building up the
they never had touch with regular Americans. Brian, they never had touch with regular Americans. If you live in a progressive bubble, a Los Angeles, Manhattan, Washington, D.C. bubble, you don't know anything about the folks. And the same thing on the right. If you live in this unbelievable, narrow caste where every Democrat is bad, everything on the other side is evil, you don't have touch with the folks. The folks want common sense. They want lower prices in the grocery store. Ms. Harris, the vice president, couldn't explain why the prices went up. She couldn't explain how she was going to bring them down. She would say things like, I'm going to get the price gougers. Well, how, madam? How are you going to do that in a capitalist society? Never explained. Very bad candidate.
I want to play you another clip, Bill. This is from the same podcast. They accused Trump of even doing something illegal. Take a listen to this.
And he had an army of super PACs that were so coordinated. I'm sure there's some legal way they were coordinated, but
I'm sure it was legal.
Yes, right. Yeah. Or illegal. Yes.
Okay, so they say an army of super PACs, but then at the same time, we know they spent $1.5 billion, maybe $2 billion. Is there really a difference? I had a buddy of mine saying, oh, but Elon gave so much money in Pennsylvania, but it wasn't the same thing happening on the other side, too?
Both had enough money to do whatever they wanted to do. When you give $500,000 to Al Sharpton, and NBC doesn't even know you gave it to him, and then he goes on MSNBC and interviews Kamala Harris with the biggest cupcakes you've ever seen. When that happens, I don't think you want to bring up any corruption. When you're giving Oprah $2.5 million for Harpo, her production company, for a day, it was like a spa day with Kamala and Oprah. Let's go to the spa. Let's get our nails done. And I know I'm going to be accused of being a misogynist, whatever, but that's what it was like. $2.5 million. Come on. And then you're sitting around a table going, Trump had an army of people. So ridiculous. I hope people see the absurdity of all of this. Just admit it, Democratic Party. You lost. You weren't on the right side of the issues for the folks. You don't have any leadership in the party. Joe Biden is the second worst president of all time. If you read my book, Confronting the Presidents, we make that case, and it is rock solid. That's why you lost. I don't even know if JFK could have won under those circumstances.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised, listening to the whole podcast that they didn't, in a way to just relate to people again and maybe to try to bring some people back, admit some mistakes. I mean, that's a way that you can, pull people in, show them that you're normal, show them that you're human instead of just digging your heels in. I do want to play you another clip, though, Bill. This is from Sharon Stone, called America Adolescents, the ones who voted for Trump. Listen to this.
My country is in its adolescence. Adolescence is very arrogant. Adolescence thinks it knows everything. Adolescence is naive and ignorant and arrogant.
So what do we make of this? I mean, she was overseas at a film festival, but when she says my country, I mean, this is more than half of America who voted for Trump. They have different reasons that they voted for him. They don't all love him. I mean, it seems like she's putting everybody sort of into a box.
I don't care what she says. I like her. I don't care.
Do you?
She can run around the Czech Republic. She can run around Albania screaming about how adolescent Americans are. I still like you, Sharon. Okay, I don't care what you say. You can't sit for an interview with me because obviously I would make you back up what you say, and you can't. But there is some truth to the fact that people voted emotion 3 weeks ago tonight. Yes, absolutely. There were immature votes, but I think they were spread out on both sides. I mean, to vote for more of Joe Biden, I think that's a little adolescent, is it not? The man was an absolute disaster. You want 4 more years of that? When his vice president goes, I can't think of anything I would do differently. Hello? That's 14 years old.
I wasn't expecting you to say you love Sharon Stone, but I actually do too, so I don't want to rag on her too much.
She's
it was interesting she said that. Yeah, last question. I was reading your column. Trump is the happiest man around this Thanksgiving. Makes sense. I mean, everything seems to be going his way right now. All the cases have been dropped. He's not going to go to jail. He won the presidency. All these parties at Mar-a-Lago. I'm curious, though. I mean, what do you think he's worried about right now? Is there anything? Because obviously the stuff must have been weighing on him, all the cases, and was he going to win? Is there anything you think that still got him concerned?
Yeah, he was yelling at the New York Times last night at 2 a.m. He's always got to have something to worry about. I mean, that's who he is, okay? What does he care what the New York Times says? You know, they're never going to like you, ever, no matter what you do. So it comes a point where, and when I talk to the president-elect, which isn't a lot, but once in a while, I try to go, look, he's a funny guy. I've been to Knicks games and Yankee games with him. He's got a great sense of humor. I said, look, I hate to use a cliche, but lighten up on this. You won. Not only do you won, you wiped them out. All right, you won the culture war. You won the political war. You won the legal war. Yes, you suffered, and it was wrong what they did to you. But didn't you
do the wave with him at a Yankee game? Was that you? I'm trying to remember. Didn't you do the wave with him at a Yankee game?
He did the wave. I did the finger. That's what I did. I refused to do the wave. Dusty is scolding me. We have to go. Brian.
Yeah, she's yelling at me too. She said I went too long. It was nice to talk to you, though, Bill. Happy Thanksgiving. Have a great one. All right. Still to come tonight, Trump's new border czar spent the day in Texas at the border, and he made it very clear that anyone who stood in the way of their mass deportation policy would pay a price. So should all these mayors and governors refusing to play along, should they be worried? Could they actually get arrested? That's coming up next. Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, was on the border today in Texas. He said he was there to prepare for Trump's stricter border policy, which takes effect on day one of his presidency. Homan also toured the 1,400 acres offered by Texas to build a controversial mass deportation facility for undocumented immigrants. Many blue state governors and mayors have vowed not to cooperate with the Trump administration's deportation policies and might even try to impede them. Here's what he said today.
Let me be clear. There is going to be a mass deportation because we just finished a mass illegal immigration crisis on the border. And I'm sending a message for people who said they're going to get in our way. They're going to stop us from doing what we're doing on interior enforcement operation. I've said 100 times in the last week, don't cross that line.
All right, joining me now, former U.S. Border Patrol Chief Rodney Scott and also immigration activist Carlos Espina. I appreciate both of you for being with me tonight. Rodney, I want to start with you. We heard him talking about mass deportations. I mean, I keep wondering, is that sort of just a buzzword? What does that actually mean? Are they just going to go after criminals? Is this going to be something where we see, like families being pulled out of homes? What does mass deportations mean?
So the word mass seems to get everybody's attention, but the deportation, the number, it's going to be a very, very large number. You can add the adjective that you want, but we have over 1.3, upwards of 1.4 million illegal aliens with a final order of removal issued by a judge. To adjudicate that, you have to, or to actually keep integrity in the judicial process, you have to take that final step. You have to remove those people. The vast majority are going to be criminals. Those are going to be the people they go after initially. But the difference between the Trump administration and what we've seen in the last administration is law enforcement officers are not going to be forced to ignore illegal activity going on right in front of their face. When they go to take out a target, whoever that individual is, when they encounter other illegal aliens that have an order of removal, they're going to be deported as well. Just by sheer statistics, it is going to be the largest operation that this country's ever seen because we've never had an illegal alien population, especially even with final orders of removal, this large.
Carlos, in terms of what Rodney was describing as sort of like phase one, people who are criminals, do you have an issue with them finding them and deporting them in terms of that criminal population?
No, of course not. And I think the vast majority of the people here in this country, citizens, non-citizens, agree with, deporting people who commit crimes. If you drink and drive, if you abuse your spouse, whatever it may be, I'm all in favor for, deporting those people. I think the worry comes when we talk about mass deportations and what we saw in the campaign. It wasn't really limited to that, and there is a lot of, while there is people, that broke the law and came here legally, at the end of the day, they're still here contributing, working, paying taxes. And I'm not saying there shouldn't be any punishment, but, maybe there can be something different. You pay a fine, you pay some sort of other retribution for the actions you've committed without having to go to the extreme of deportation and separating families. And at the end of the day, affecting our communities because a lot of undocumented immigrants in construction, in farm, in every sector of the economy essentially contribute a lot to this country. And I think that's really where the worry comes in. If we just focus on criminals, okay, I think that's fine. I think the issue is when you start going after hardworking people who are contributing, and that's what gets people worried.
Could it actually come to that, Rodney? I mean, I know a lot was said during the campaign, but you understand the inner workings and the staff and how many people there actually are. I mean, could they actually go into factories, places where people are working who are not criminals and just say, we're going to figure out who's not here illegally and they have to go right away, regardless of whether they're working or if they have families or whatever?
So let's be clear. Federal law requires that anybody that is in the United States illegally basically be deported. There's a process for it, but that is the law, period. If you crossed into this country illegally and you're apprehended, you're going to be set up for removal proceedings. And when a judge says that you don't have any reason to stay here, you're going to be deported. There is no protected group of illegal aliens under the Trump administration. There's no protected group of illegal aliens, by the way, under federal law. The last administration carved out some exceptions that were not legal. So I believe the next administration will do the same thing that we did in the past. We'll prioritize our resources to try to go after the worst of the worst, because you just don't have enough resources to go deport everybody every single day. But here's a message. If you're in the United States illegally, it is in your best interest to leave on your own now. If you are arrested and deported, there is a legal bar in law that you will be forbidden from getting any immigration benefits in the United States for a certain amount of time. If you leave on your own without being arrested, there is not a legal bar to applying to come back. But there's nobody that's going to be off the table. That's because that's what federal law says.
Just really quick, we only have a few seconds left, but Carlos, I'm curious, have you heard of, is anyone actually considering leaving now out of fear of being deported?
Yeah, I mean, something I've seen people talk about, or I've seen, people say, oh, my family member. Now, what percentage of people, what number, I think it's impossible to know, but it's definitely something that's happened before, and it's continuing to happen, and I'm sure will continue to happen. That wouldn't surprise me at all.
Rodney Scott, Carlos Ospina, I appreciate you both for coming on tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay, coming up next, a missing person story that is turning into a true mystery. A 30-year-old woman from Hawaii misses her flight to New York, hasn't been seen now for 15 days. Friends and family, they received odd texts from her, learned she was last seen at a train station with an unidentified person. Then an even stranger, really tragic twist. Her father takes his own life. How does that fit in? Where is she? That's next. Is Hannah Kobayashi, the 30-year-old woman from Hawaii who went missing 15 days ago on her way to visiting her aunt in New York. Here's what we know. It was on Friday, November 8th. Hannah flew from Maui to Los Angeles and missed her connecting flight to New York. Saturday, November 9th, Hannah was seen at the Grove Shopping Mall. It's a popular mall in downtown LA where she went to a bookstore to charge her phone. Sunday, November 10th, Hannah went back to the Grove and was seen in the background of a video attending a LeBron James event. Then on Monday, the 11th, Hannah went back to the airport. And at some point, she sent some very concerning texts. She was saying that she was scared and had been tricked, quote, into giving away all my funds for someone I thought I loved. That same night, Hannah was reportedly seen leaving the airport with an unidentified person. But later that night, surveillance video, which has not been released, shows Hannah at a train station also with an unidentified person. I spoke to Hannah's aunt a few days ago about the video. Take a listen.
There's no reason that Hannah would go there unless she was misled, unless she was forced to, or unfortunately now we're thinking unless she was drugged. It made us extremely alarmed to the point where we started sounding the alarm as loud as we could.
What, after seeing the video, you mean?
Yes.
It's already such a sad situation, and now there's another twist to the story. Hannah's father, Ryan, who had gone to LA to search for his daughter, has taken his life. He was actually supposed to be on with me too and was feeling emotional, and now we find out that he has committed suicide. And now here to help us make some sense of all of this is former FBI agent, NewsNation law and justice contributor Jennifer Coffendorfer, and Dog the bounty hunter who actually knows Hannah. It's good to see both of you. Jennifer, I want to start with you. You heard the aunt. She told me that they were disturbed by the surveillance video. The police showed the family surveillance video, but they haven't made the video public. But she didn't want to go into detail. She didn't want to interfere with the investigation. What do you think is going on here? What do you think that video might show?
Well, when you look at the timeline, there was always communication with the family. Her phone was always working. She actually took special steps to charge it to make sure it was working. But then on the 11th, the same time she's seen with this individual who's a stranger, and after some very cryptic messages came in, even mentioning deep state hackers, all of a sudden she's missing. I think that piece of surveillance is critical, and I think she could be in the hands of a stranger taking advantage of her and the situation.
And Dog, you actually knew Hannah, which I kind of wondered about because you're from Hawaii. Hannah's from Hawaii. I know you've got a lot of connections there. What do you know about her?
Well, it wasn't me actually that knew. It was my daughter, Cecily. And Hannah had spent the night 3 or 4 times with us in Oahu, in Honolulu. And then Hannah, moved on to Maui. But I agree with Jennifer 100%. We used to teach our real children, we used to say stranger danger. And now it's getting, into, Hannah's 31 years old. All women, beware. There are things happening, especially in California. There are things happening that are unbelievable. And, I think she was snatched. And one thing about it, I hope to God that she's still alive.
Yeah, I mean, we all do. Jennifer, just thinking the police haven't really said much. Dog says maybe she was snatched. You would think if that was the case, there would be press conferences. There would be flyers everywhere. They would be out every day saying, this is the description of who we think took her. We're not hearing much from police, Jennifer.
Well, the reason we're not hearing from them is because there is going to be video surveillance all over that airport, all over that subway station, all over these venues where she's been. So they're pouring all over that. Oftentimes when you see law enforcement reach out, it's because they don't have any more clues to go with. Law enforcement has a lot they're working with right now.
What do you make, Dog, some of the text messages that the family has said they received where she wrote, got tricked into pretty much giving away all my funds, deep hackers wiped my identity, stole all my funds, and have had me on a mind F since Friday. Do you think was drugged in that? I mean, why would she be is it her sending it, do you think?
Well, Cecily, my daughter, who knew her very good, there was no way. She might have smoked, in Hawaii, weed is called pakalolo. She might have smoked some pakalolo as she got older, but she was very, very against drugs. And the text messages, again, Cecily said it doesn't sound like her. And it sounds like, I know a lot of ladies that join these dating places and then send money to the guy, and then he's not real. So I don't think that it was that. I think the text messages was not Hannah.
What do you make of the text, Jen?
Well, I agree. And I agree because of this. The family says they know her vernacular. Remember in cases like Anna Knezevich, or of course, Gabby Petito, where the family pointed out straight away, listen, this does not sound like anything that she would write. And that's what the family is saying here. It's not going with how she texts or her vernacular.
And what do you make, Jennifer? I mean, it's so tragic. I couldn't really believe it, but that the dad went to L.A. to help find her and then took his own life. I mean, how do you process that?
Well, he searched for 13 days, long and hard. And I can't imagine the grief that would overcome a father in this way. And so it seems to me that the motive would have been very clear, at least from his eyes, absolute despair and frustration. And you add on to that, Brian, and the family pointed this out. People not believing the family, people in social media actually going after the family, poo-pooing what they had to say, saying, oh, she's really not missing. She's just on some sort of venture or something like that. It was awful. And the family said, please don't talk like this. We're at a very vulnerable state. And then look what happened.
Do you think they're going to find her, Dog? I mean, how do you think this is going to play out?
Well, I think they are going to find her. We have a new administration coming in, and there's going to be a lot of police officers, defunding the police, especially in California. I'm doing a thing later this week where I'm talking to the cops, and don't worry, things are going to get better. They don't even want to pull over traffic tickets because if they put the guy in jail, they're out in 15 minutes. So the police officers' morale is very low. Again, after the new administration takes over, it's going to, I think, yes, we're going to find her. They're going to find her alive.
Well, we're going to have Hannah's aunt on tomorrow night again, and we want to get the word out. Doug, maybe you've got a lot of followers since you have a connection to the family. You can help now. Jennifer Koffendorfer, Dog the Bounty Hunter, appreciate you both for coming on tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay, still to come, are we just minutes away now from a ceasefire in the Middle East? Will Israel and Lebanon finally agree on a deal to end their war and bring some peace to their citizens? We'll find out next.
Effective at 4 a.m. tomorrow local time, the fighting across the Lebanese-Israeli border will end. Will end.
Israel and Lebanon are just minutes away now from a ceasefire agreement that could finally bring some peace in the Middle East. It is scheduled to take effect at 4 a.m. local time, which is right around the corner, really around the time this show ends. Here's what the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said earlier today.
If this is finally agreed, and if this goes forward, it is the answer to the problem that has bedeviled the area for a couple of decades. So that's in the immediate what's at stake, as well as I think the larger ramifications of getting an agreement, including what I believe can be very positive effects on also ending the conflict in Gaza.
So could this agreement not just put an end to the 14 months of attacks between Israel and Hezbollah, but also help end fighting between Israel and Hamas? Joining me now is former NATO Supreme Allied Commander General Wesley Clark and the SVP of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, Jonathan Schanzer. I appreciate you both for being here. General Clark, I'll start with you. Should we be celebrating tonight? I mean, is this really good news? Is there something that we're sort of missing beyond just the headline here?
Well, I think we should be celebrating. I think, this was a resounding defeat of Hezbollah. I think the Israeli Defense Forces did a good job militarily in taking out the Hezbollah infrastructure and their ability to attack Israel. So I think the northern areas of Israel now are more secure than they have been. So all that's very positive. It's just that, we've had these ceasefires before. This is 50 years of continuous warfare in this area. And the ceasefire agreement that's been negotiated and approved, it provides authority for Israel to defend itself, but it doesn't actually provide an effective enforcement mechanism to keep Hezbollah from coming back in. It says that's a mission of the Lebanese armed forces. They've had that mission before. They haven't succeeded in it. They don't want to succeed in it because it could cause civil war in Lebanon. So for now, let's be happy. But recognize we need to go a lot further to go after Iran's hegemonic aspirations in the region.
Yeah, I mean, Jonathan, should Israel have just put an end to Hezbollah? Are they in a way sort of giving in by agreeing to this ceasefire?
No, I don't think so. I think the Israelis have done a good job of really removing a lot of the top leadership of Hezbollah. They've taken out something like, 60 to 75% of their long-range missiles and rockets. They've destroyed a lot of that infrastructure in Beirut, in this neighborhood known as Dahia, where Hezbollah has had its headquarters. I think really the big question is about enforcement, but the Israelis have something else that's in their pocket now. They've banked this from Washington. They've got a side letter, and that side letter gives Israel effectively a free hand to target Hezbollah anytime they see the group starting to rearm and reconstitute in southern Lebanon and central Lebanon and northern Lebanon. And on top of that, the U.S. is going to be releasing its hold on weapons to the Israelis, including some of those 2,000-pound bombs that had been held up. So I see right now the Israelis have strengthened their hand after having eviscerated Hezbollah since September. I think it's a good day. Obviously, it doesn't mean the end of war in the Middle East. That is going to be up to Iran, which has been using all of its proxies on 7 different fronts to attack Israel. But this is, I think, a good start and maybe a step, as Secretary Blinken said, in the right direction to perhaps even ending the war in Gaza as well.
Explain, Jonathan, when you say side letter, what does that mean?
Well, we don't have a lot of information about it yet, but we've been hearing that the Israelis have received some kind of guarantee from the Biden administration that if and when and I think it really is a question of when, if and when Hezbollah starts reconstituting, rebuilding, rearming in Lebanon, that there will not be any restraints put on the Israelis. I have to imagine the Trump administration won't have any problems with that. I think they're thinking more like 4, 8, 12 years into the future. They may want to hold up that letter and say, Mr. or Mrs. President, we have this guarantee. Stand aside while we take care of Hezbollah.
Interesting. Yeah, makes sense. General Clark, how does this play into the situation in Gaza? I mean, does this help? Is this a step closer to peace there, or is it a totally separate issue?
I think the two are not totally separate. I do think it cuts off any hope that Hamas has that somehow Hezbollah's actions in northern Israel against the IDF are going to prevent Israel from finishing the job militarily in Gaza. And so in that sense, yes, it's helpful in bringing the conflict in Gaza to a close. Israel still has to do the job there militarily. Hamas has not made it easy. But this is one more means of cutting off any hope that Hamas has that Israel is going to be distracted.
Are we seeing, General, Iran's proxies splinter at this point? I mean, is this a sign of that?
If that's to me, we are not seeing yet the kind of effect we'd like to see on Iran's proxies in this so-called axis of resistance. We're not seeing that yet. We should be following up on that. This is the time. This is a window of opportunity. Iran is very weak. Iran's looking for some kind of a fig leaf of a diplomatic agreement to reduce the pressure from the West without, at the same time, giving up on its own aspirations. This is a time to take advantage of Iran's weakness and do more in the region.
There are some Israelis protesting against the ceasefire, and I was sort of wondering, does a ceasefire like this give Hezbollah, Jonathan, like an opportunity to rearm, to take a break and to get stronger? Or are they just watching them so closely that can't happen?
I don't think there's a high likelihood that in the next couple of years they're able to get back to the power that they once had. They had a lot of weapons in their arsenal. Now they've got a lot fewer of them, and they've got much fewer leaders. They don't have people running the show anymore. I think if anything, the Israelis are going to take this time to rearm and reconstitute. Wouldn't be surprised to see a surprise offensive against Hezbollah and Iran in the near future.
Interesting. All right, General Wesley Clark and Jonathan Shanzer, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be right back after this.